Joining me now, former New Hampshire Governor John Sununu, who served as chief of staff for late President Bush. All right, good evening, Governor. I know that
Judge.
I know that you are personally very sorrowful tonight, and I just want to find a little bit out about the president and the fact that we all know he was a man that excelled at everything. He excelled at sports. He excelled in education. I mean, he was accepted at Yale. He excelled at patriotism. At the age of 18, he signed up to go into the, I believe, into the Navy. And he had 58 combat missions. One was his plane was hit, and he ends up being picked up in the Pacific by a submarine. This man is a hero with accolades that we don't often hear about.
Well, he was a great man. He was an easy person to be a friend with. And he was always a lot of fun. Even in the toughest times we had, we always found a few moments to have a good laugh.
And he, in addition to having a sense of humor, he was a man who was liked by everyone and was very much a diplomat. I mean, tell us about the man that you call the quiet man.
Well, he had a style which was not pushy, a style which was had a great component of listening to it. He had developed relationships over the years, but he also had this great capacity to put himself in the shoes of the person he was trying to deal with. He put himself in Gorbachev's shoes when he was trying to work out the collapse of the Soviet Union, and he nursed it along magnificently, not pushing too hard, but pushing fast enough to get things done. He put himself in the shoes of his opponents when he was trying to do the budget deal. And he certainly was a man who understood that there was a lot of value in getting agreements that were win-win.
And you know, the fact that he very often had an opposing party in the legislative branch with as many as 260 Democrats to 175 Republicans in the House, 55
Judge,
of the...
Not often, always.
The whole
always.
Right, the whole term. And that he was able to get incredible, very legislation that will, be a part of his legacy, including the American with Disabilities Act.
I said it earlier today, he passed more domestic legislation of import than any president except Lyndon Johnson or Franklin Roosevelt. It was the budget agreement which produced the only surpluses we've had in decades, even though Bill Clinton liked to take credit for him. The 5-year budget agreement produced those. He had the Clean Air Bill,
right,
the Americans with Disabilities Act, the Civil Rights Bill, the legislation that established energy policy that opened up the path to energy independence, the crime bill. We could go on and on and on.
It is incredible. And, when you talk about the passage of all of this legislation, you realize that this was a man with military accomplishments, and he apparently likened his political, the diplomacy to a mission. He said, I'm a man who sees life in terms of missions defined and missions completed. And I guess that philosophy carried him through not just the war, but through his political life as well.
Well, it is. And he had the capacity to understand just how much had to be done and what kind of a pace to put on it. It was reflected in his campaigns. It was reflected in his dealing with Congress on all these various issues. Think about this. It was a one-term presidency. So you add up all the things he did in foreign policy, all the things he did in domestic policy, and recognize that these were all going on simultaneously. We were doing all of this every day. And this president was smart enough to be able to handle those details, to be able to work with folks on a one-on-one basis when it was required. And as I said earlier, smart enough to take a little time out through the whole process and join us in a few laughs.
Well, and, there is also much talk about the fact that he loved sports. He loved football. And we're going to talk about that. We've got people he played golf with, the country music he loved. And he was a man who was able to do it all and also have a fabulous family that he spent time with and reared in a very, not just religious, but in a very elegant and sophisticated and, a patriotic way.
Judge, you talk about his love of sports. He was captain of the Yale baseball team. And there's really an iconic photo out there, people can find it online, of George H.W. Bush in his baseball uniform as captain of the team with Babe Ruth about 6 months before Babe Ruth died, accepting from Babe Ruth Babe Ruth's memoirs for the Yale Library. And it's just an amazing photo of these two iconic figures, one from baseball and one from eventually American politics. And to get the two of them on the same occasion talking to each other has always been one of my great historical coincidences.
All right. Governor John Sununu, thanks so much for sharing your thoughts on the president. And we know that your heart is filled with sorrow. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Judge.
Thank you.